Good afternoon. I'm Terry Benton, and with me is Don Hastings. Let's take our Bible and study the Word of God together, and God will bless us in that study if we have a sincere heart. So let's begin by looking at the subject again. We're talking about the wrath of God in Romans chapter 1. And he says in Romans 1 verse 18 that the wrath of God is clearly revealed. It is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness. He's revealed it in such occasions as the flood. He revealed it in the destruction of cities like Sodom and Gomorrah, Jerusalem, many other places that the Bible speaks of, showing the wrath of God has been put on display. Then there are a lot of people, though, that just want to dismiss that and don't want to face the fact that sin brings about the wrath of God. So they try to dismiss God altogether. So the next verses then say, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. And then he tells us how. How does God show himself to all people? Well, verse 20 says, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, things that you cannot see God physically, but his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. You look at the things that are made, and you can see this is the power of God. God has displayed his great wisdom in the creation itself. When you look at that, he says, man is without excuse. There is no excuse for unbelief, because you can look at it and you can say, this is no accident. What do you got on that, Don?
Well, I want to read a few words from Brother R.L. Whiteside in his commentary on Romans. He writes that the invisible things of God are clearly seen, being perceived or understood by the things that are made. These invisible things of God are explained as his everlasting power and divinity, or his divine nature. We know that power is necessary to change or to make or to create anything. But how do the things which God made enable us to see clearly his everlasting power? The atheist denies the existence of God. So he must come up with some kind of explanation for the existence of the universe and plant and animal life. And he believes in the theory of evolution, that evolution is the cause for this universe and for plant life and human life. But is it more reasonable to believe that this universe and the life that exists evolved through mindless, inorganic matter, or by an intelligent creator who possesses all wisdom? And the creation of God just shows his awesome wisdom. The word axiom is defined by Webster a self-evident or universally accepted truth. And one of the axioms is that out of nothing comes nothing. You go into an empty room with nothing, you're going to come out with nothing. Another axiom is that something is, therefore something was. So if something has to be eternal in its nature. Now, is that something the divine being, God, or did it just naturally evolve into what we see today? What has always existed? So there are only two choices. The choices are eternal lifeless matter, evolution, or eternal intelligence, God. Either choice must be accepted by faith. For in Hebrews chapter 11, we'll be reading the 3rd verse. It says, by faith, we understand the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which are visible.
So what we've got then is a display of God's power. We look at the things that are made, and we can see something about his invisible attributes. We can see, for example, he's a wise God. We can see he is a powerful God. But we learn from his displays of wrath that God is a holy God, that he is not going to just tolerate sin. And he's not going to give us an out. He's not going to say, well, you got a good excuse. No, in fact, our problem in our country is because those professing to be wise have brainwashed our children, and we let it happen. Now, Romans chapter 1 says in verse 21, he says, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts. As you try to explain the world without God, you're going to become very futile in your thinking. You're going to be thinking correctly. And he says, and their foolish hearts were darkened. If you're not thinking correctly, your heart is going to get darker and darker. Sin is going to prevail, take over, and destroy you, and destroy those around you, and destroy the world. But then verse 22, he says, professing to be wise, they became fools. We got a lot of professors that this verse says, you're a fool. You try to start with an all-natural material assumption, and you assume that the only source of knowledge comes from tests inside the control of a human experiment, that you can experiment with things and that those are the only answers that are valid. But then they don't even use that against their own argument. You can't set up some tests and prove, for example, that there was a Big Bang that happened billions of years ago. You can't set up some tests and prove that the Big Bang was able to organize the universe and then even create life itself. Those are not testable things. That's not real science. That's false science. You can't prove that life can evolve from soup to make humans and human intelligence and moral ought all by itself. You can't prove that if your life depended upon it. But that is the professing to be wise that goes on when you want to eliminate God. Well, when you look at that correctly, then you look at the universe and say, God is the only real answer to all of this. Sin is prevailing now only because professors who profess to be wise have aided and abetted the wrongness of explaining why we're here, how we got here, and where we're going. What else you got on that, Don?
Now, the universe, this earth, and plant and animal life, our human bodies, all displays the awesome wisdom of God. Psalm 33, verses 6 through 9, says, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and the host of them by the breath of his mouth. He gathers the waters of the sea together as a heap. He lays up the deep in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast. In Psalm 104, verse 24, we're told that in wisdom he has made all things. In Psalm 139, verse 14, David said, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and that my soul knows right well. His works are marvelous. In Psalm 147, verse 4, he counts the number of stars and calls them all by name. And I find that amazing. Man doesn't know the number of stars, but God does. He not only knows them, but he's named every one of them. Wow. So that is truly amazing how awesome our God is in his creation.
Now to look at it, it's kind of like what David said in Psalm 19:1. He says the heavens just declare it. I mean, you just cannot look at our universe and have an excuse for saying, I just don't believe there is an eternal creator. No, you can't do that. In fact, Romans 1 is saying there's just no excuse for that. Well, I appreciate you taking time to listen to this and study these things out with us. If you have any questions and would like us to address those, please write me at terrywbenton@gmail.com, and we'll try to get back with you on that topic. Thank you for studying the Word of God, and God bless you in that.
Thank you for listening.